My name is Norman Y. Chambliss Jr. Today is April 29th, 2014. I was born February 17th, 1925 in Parkview Hospital, Rocky Mount, North Carolina. My mother and dad at that time lived on Sycamore Street in a duplex apartment with the Dawsons next door, Sue Dawson and Mickey Dawson. And we, of course, went there, and my first 4 or 5 years was there in that house. And I remember my Martha said something to me about a goat, and I'd forgotten about a goat. So my dad wasn't married; he was later in life, and he had a lot of great buddies. In his bachelor days, when he was married, they weren't, and so they spent a lot of time at our house. And so one Christmas, they gave me a goat for Christmas, and it had a wagon, just like a regular. It was green, just like a regular farm wagon. It had a seat on it, and I could hook the goat up to the wagon. I couldn't, but I was too young. But anyway, I came down the steps Christmas morning, and the goat was sitting in a chair in the living room. And my mother said, I looked at it and I just said, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't know what I didn't care, but anyway, that was my expression with the goat. And we had a pen in the backyard and kept the goat in there, and Mother'd have to call Dad at the bank to come home. The goat have his horns hung in the fence and couldn't get out, and I had to get him out of the fence. And so they were good old memories, but we just had a good neighborhood. We lived next door in a way across a short street there. Mr. Thorpe, who was an attorney in Rocky Mount, he and Ike Thorpe were partners in a law practice. And Bill Thorpe was born the same month that I was. We were exactly the same age. Bill later on was an attorney here in Rocky Mount. But his mother, Sadie Thorpe, ran a kindergarten over there in her backyard. And I would go there every morning. And I was about 4 years old, I guess. And one morning when I was 4, they told me to go home, that I had a new little brother. So I went home to see my new little brother. It was Joe, my brother Joe. And I went upstairs in the apartment there, and there he was. And my mother said that I said to her, there's just one thing I want to know. Ms. Thorpe said that a stork brought this baby here, and you said, excuse me, you said Dr. Thorpe brought it. Now, who brought the baby? And I don't know what the answer was, but it must have suited me all right. But that's when Joe was born, and we moved up the hill. I know one other thing I can think of down there. The bank gave Daddy a car. I'm sorry, my throat's clear. Gave Dad a bank car to travel around. He called on farmers and things like that. And I remember on the front of it, he had a poster, and it said, it had a picture of Lindbergh and the Spirit of St. Louis airplane. And this was 1929, and that's when he flew, and I guess it was a tremendous thing. And he had this sign on the front of his car commemorating that feat that Lindbergh did. And we moved up the hill on Sycamore Street to the Joe Seal apartment. And when we got up there, we were on the left side downstairs, and the Thigpens were on the right, and Helen Morgan lived upstairs. She had a brother named Paul, and Helen's a little older than me, but I knew her well. And I remember Norman Bennett. One of the Bennetts had a lot of children. And Norman was a musician. He could play a banjo. And he would come over there, and Helen had a veranda upstairs he could come out on. And he would play the banjo, and she would look down. It was sort of like a movie almost. I remember the little boy, I would watch him. So I asked Helen about that, about a year ago. She remembered it. But anyway, we only lived there about a year. And Dad bought a house, the house that we grew up in, 1301 Sunset Avenue. He bought that during the Depression. Judge Grissom had owned it, and he lost it during the Depression. Dad bought the house in 31. I was 5 or 6. And he paid $4,500 for the house and a lot next door. And that was a lot of money back in those days. And he financed it, I remember, the Jefferson Standard Life Insurance Company. But we lived there. It was a great place to grow up. Sunset Apartments weren't there then. There's a cotton field out there. And I'd go there, a little boy with a bag, and they'd let me help pick cotton. And I'd pick cotton over there. And I grew up with Flake Chiplin, Neil Nelson, and Jimmy Exum, Gene Williams. All of them lived over on Beale Street, and I spent most of my time over there with them. Alfie Thorne was my closest friend, I guess, and we did lots of things together. He lived up where his home was up there where the Lakeside Baptist Church is now. And I could see his house from my house. In fact, we would run a string all the way up there and put a can on each end, see if we could make a telephone. But we would also use it by the telephone, and that helped us a lot, get to hear a real telephone. But we thought we were pretty good on that. In my earlier days from across town, I remember next door to Alfie, actually nearer the lake. The lake wasn't there then, but I went to kindergarten there, and Miss Maribel Fagan ran the thing, and that's where Mr. Easley later lived, and Mike Easley, Alec Easley, his son, lived there, who was Mike Easley's daddy. And I kind of grew up with him too, with Alec. But I went to kindergarten there, and let's see, I started school there. I was 6 years old. I started school in the old West School, where Braswell School is now. And we only had 6 grades, and the principal was Miss Amber Morton. And she had a little dog, and she would bring the dog to school every day with her. And I remember Mother knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody. Miss Mary Darden Brewer was 4th grade teacher, and Miss Macon was the 2nd grade, and Miss Amber Morton was the principal, but she's a 3rd grade teacher too. But she spent a lot of her time down in the office, which suited all students fine. We could raise cane and have a good time. But she was real good, and I don't know how she did it. Just handled it all by herself, but she did. But I was there in that school until the 7th grade, and they didn't have one. We went over to Wilson School for 1 year in Wilson School, and then from there we went to Rocky Mount High School, junior high and senior high, in the R.M. Wilson building, which is there now. I think it's an apartment all there. I was not an athletic. I wasn't heavy enough to play football, and although I liked baseball, and I could have done that, but anyway, I never got involved in the athletic program at school. But I had a good friend who picked me up for some reason. His name was Mike Carr. Mike ended up being a real big executive in Louisiana years later. I don't think he was governor, but he was certainly pretty close to it. But he got me into high school politics. And so I ran for junior high president, and I won that, and senior high, and I won that. And in my senior year, I ran for president of Consolidated High, and but I ran against Nancy Dozier, who was a real pretty girl, man, and I didn't have much chance. Every boy in the school voted for her, I'm sure, and so I didn't have much chance. So I didn't win that one, but it was pretty good anyway. We were all the guys were getting ready to go in service. We were allowed boys to drop any subject they wanted to and take one that would help them. And they provided a lot of good subjects. They had navigation and radio and things like that. So I dropped my French, first thing I dropped that right away. And then anything I didn't like. And Miss Dorothy Craighill was my French teacher, the sweet lady. And she said, Norman, I hope someday the time will come that you will wish you had applied yourself and learned French. And I said, Miss Craighill, there's no way that could ever happen. And later on, I don't know where I was flying out of, and Kurt probably would, I know he'll understand this. They brought a bunch of French cadets in there, and they couldn't speak English. And they didn't care where they landed, upwind, downwind, or what wind. They didn't care, and we had to watch out for them. And we'd hear them talking on French on the radio, but we didn't know what they were saying. So I wrote her a letter. I said, the time has come. I wish I could understand what these guys are saying, because I'm afraid one of them going to hit me straight on. But anyway, that was a cute little fun we had, and she was a nice lady. I was, when I went in service, in 43, I went to Pope Field. We were all going in something, and I didn't want to get drafted into the all walking army. So I went down and applied and passed the cadet physical and mental thing they gave us, and I was in the aviation cadets. And they let me stay home from April to May 28th to graduate from high school. And I did, and then they had me at Biloxi, Mississippi, and training down there, just where you learn to march and salute and all that kind of thing, and shoot a rifle and things like that. The only time I ever had anything like that, but everybody had to do that. To make a difference what you were in, you had to learn those things. We had some we had some guys in there who had transferred from the infantry into the aviation cadets, and they were there, and we called them pre-service men, and some of them probably hadn't been in service more than maybe 3 or 4 months. And we lived in tents. They run out of barracks down there, so we lived in tents, right big ones, 5 or 6 guys in each one of them. And we were going to go on a march one day, and I was packing all my stuff, my shelter half, and my half of a tent, and Kurt probably had this too. When about a shelter half, you get with your buddy and put a tent together. I had half the tent, and the other guy had the other half, and I had the stakes and that way. Anyway, I was packing it all up, and this fellow from Rhode Island named Francois, what are you doing, buddy? I said, I'm packing all this up. Don't put that stuff. We're just going to walk out there and come back. I've done it many times. No use to haul all that stuff out there, all that heavy stuff. I said, you think so? Yeah, I know so. So I pushed it all under bed, and we marched out there. I didn't have anything in my pack. He didn't either. So we got out there. I said, this thing getting on pretty good. And we stopped, and the truck came, brought us our lunch. Everybody ate our lunch, and I said, well, we're going to walk on back. Herky O'Hanlon was our sergeant. They had gotten him out of the brig because they had run out of sergeants. And he was from Brooklyn, New York. And he was walking up there and said, "Okay, guys, everybody pay up and put up your tent." I said, "What we gonna do, buddy?" He said, "I don't know." So we just stood there, and he came walking along. Everybody put it, we didn't have. "What's the matter with you guys?" "Well, we left our tent back at the base." "Oh, you left your tent back at the base?" "Oh, well, I'm so sorry." "Well, you just watch the other fellows put theirs up." And he walked on. I said, "You know we're not going to get off this easy." Didn't say a word until we started to fall in to go back. "You two guys that didn't have a tent, get in the back." We got into the base there, and we got to a street, and he halted the whole thing and turned it over to somebody else. "You two guys in the right down there, right face," and we right face. Before he marched us right into mess hall, and he knew everybody. And the sergeant in the mess hall said, "You got any pots and pans these guys can wash all night?" I said, "Oh yeah." So we want pots and pans all night, and I'm cussing Francois the whole time. But things like that you look back on, and they're funny times now. They weren't funny then, but they were funny things like that could happen to you. And that was basic training. And then I went on from there to North Carolina State College, what they call, we had a lot of stuff before we got to our airplane. What they call college training detachment. And that's what state, and I guess another story, I got some pull from my uncle, who was a colonel in the regular service, to get me to State College. Of course, I could have gone anywhere, Washington State or anywhere, but I ended up at State College with some pull. And we took regular college courses that I later was given credit for when I went back there as a civilian. We flew, we really just rode in Piper trainer airplanes out in Raleigh. A boy from Franklinton was my instructor. And it was just a basic orientation. And I think a lot of guys watched out there, I think they want to see if you'd get air sick, just different, or if you had any aptitude at all, And some guys didn't make it there. But anyway, that's what that was for. And from there we went to pre-flight school in Montgomery, Alabama, in Maxwell Field. And that was rigorous. And we just, we marched and we trained, and we had a cadet system, kind of like at West Point. We were plebes, or whatever you call them, and went through all that hazing stuff that they had at that place. But we learned the radio, Morse code, all that kind of stuff we would need later on. And from there, once we got through that, then we started flying. I went to Douglas, Georgia. It was a civilian-run place. And they had PT-17s, primary trainer 17. It was a double two-wing airplane with open cockpits, and you had on goggles and a helmet and all that kind of thing. And my instructor would sit in the back, and I was in the front cockpit, and they had a mirror there, and I could look in the mirror and look right in his face. And a lot of times I didn't want to, because I could tell from we didn't have radios. We had gospel, what they call them. I had a little tubes on my ears, and they had rubber tubes that hook onto it and go back. And he had a thing like a funnel, and he could talk in that funnel, and I could hear him. I couldn't talk back to him. A lot of times I wish I could have, but he would talk to him. But his name was Hibble, and great guy. Anyway, we flew 17s, and I said 5 or 6 of us, 2 of us made it. I soloed down there at Douglas, Georgia, and we didn't have a runway, just a great big open field, just no pavement or anything, just a field. And that was my primary. And then from basic training, I went to twin engine basic. The reason I went there, they wanted guys with long legs and for later on 4-engine. And from there I went to advanced and stayed more or less the same thing, but our training was more advanced. And then on to my tactical airplane, and we went to Westover Field, Massachusetts. Now, I never did understand, and I didn't care really, but I've thought about it years later. I wonder why they didn't send me to Savannah and send everybody to Savannah. That's why instead of sending all of us to Westover Field and crew up and then everybody down, the money didn't bother them in those days evidently. So we went up to Westover Field and we met our crew, what we call crewing up. And our gunners, our radio operator, our engineer, all of them, and bombardier and navigator. Gil Corbett was my navigator. Heck of a nice guy. He later on was killed in Vietnam. After he got out of service with us, he went back to Aspen, Colorado. He was a skier, loved to ski, and he was a ski patrol boy out there. I talked to him on the phone. But he later went on back in the Air Force and got his pilot's wings and stopped by Rocky Mount one Sunday to see me, and he was on his way to Vietnam. And he was flying F-4s. I don't know whether that means anything to Kurt or not, but he was flying he was an aerial photographer with F-4s, jets. And he wrote me a letter. He came here and brought his wife, and we went to Topsail Beach in my place down there and spent the weekend. And we came back, and he left. He wrote me a letter and told me about his training over there and what he was doing in Vietnam, jungle training and things like that. And I answered his letter, and pretty soon it came back. I've got it right now, but never opened it. This big mark on it, missing in action. And we never found him. I don't know what happened to him, but we never have found Gil. But I still have that letter. I was thinking maybe, he would come back, maybe a prisoner of war or something, but he didn't. But Gillen W. Corbett. And so anyway, once we graduated and we got our crew and we went to training, combat training in Savannah, Georgia, at Cochran Chatham Field, was in Chatham Field. And once we finished that, then we went to POE in Kilman, New Jersey, Camp Kilman, New Jersey. And we were going to go to England with the 8th Air Force. And we got our bags and everything on the ship as a Dutch liner. We were going there, and they turned around and brought us back. And this was in February of '45, and the Germans stopped in, I think, about May. So they saw the handwriting on the wall and evidently didn't need us. And so we went to Nashville, Tennessee to build up time in B-20 in 4-engine aircraft to go to B-29s. And because that's what we were using in the Pacific. And we had to have so many hours and something. But anyway, I always said the Germans heard I was coming, and then the Japanese heard I was coming, and they both quit. So I won the war. Anyway, I'm glad it stopped, whether I won it or not. But then I got out of service pretty soon after that, and came back to Rocky Mount, and went to Atlanta, Georgia, pretty soon with a friend of mine, Jack Taylor, and we got in Georgia Tech. We were going to go to Georgia Tech next March on the GI Bill, and I came back to Rocky Mount, and we had a big time in Atlanta. I think that's really mainly why we went down there. And came on back, and I had to do something between then and going to school in March. So I got me a job pumping gas down at the service station next to the lake down there. Mr. Stallings ran the station. And In fact, I was, I don't know how long I'd been there, but one day Tip Trueblood, who I had flown with in service in Nashville, and he was from Tarboro actually, but I didn't know him until I ran across him in Nashville, Tennessee. And he pulled in to get some gas, and I said, "Where you going, Tip?" And he said, "I'm going to State College, getting State College on GI Bill." I said, "God, let me go with you." So I went with him to State, and he and I got into service in the school there, and we roomed together in the same building, incidentally, that I was in when I was in the Air Force, Alexander. But we was going to school, getting along great. And one weekend, Tip came in and wanted to know if I knew a girl named Sister Lashcott. And I said, "I sure do." So I went to school with her, graduated. He said, "Well, I sure do like her." And he talked about it every couple of weekends. But finally, one weekend, he said, "I'm leaving school. I'm going to marry his sister. And Uncle Hyman's going to give me a job at the Rocky Mountain Mills, making $100 a week." I said, "Man, you've got it made in the shade." And so that's what he did. So I stayed there by myself, and I couldn't go back to school. Boy, I had a virus pneumonia one year fall, and I couldn't go back when it was ready. So I had to wait a semester. So I went over to Lewisburg College and got in over there, and it was a fine little school. I took basic business courses and things like that, and I got married while I was over there. And this was in '47, and pretty soon, the next thing I knew, my sweet little daughter Martha was on the way, and she came into the world and made our home happy. But I came home. I realized I had to quit school and come on home, and I got a job with my mother. Did it for me. Got a job with Sam Toland, S.S. Toland son, on the job training, and he taught me estimating, and that just really worked me real hard, and I'm glad he did. I didn't like it then, but I do now, and he was a great fellow, but he didn't want to do anything but work. He told me that when I started, but he was a great guy. So anyway, I worked for him, and we lived in my mother's house. We had one room there, and Martha was a little bitty thing, and fortunately I arranged to start trying to build the first part of this house, the front part of it up there, and I got it built. And Martha was born. She reminds me every month. She was born July the 21st, 1948. And sometimes she'll sneak in 2 or 3 birthday presents on you, reminding you. But anyway, that's all right. So she came along in '48 in July, and I built this house. We moved in here in '49, sometime in the year '49. The first part of it, I just had 2 bedrooms, a bath, a living room, and a kitchen up there. And so then, then the next thing I knew, Rochelle was on the way. And by then I had changed jobs. I was traveling with a building supply company and doing better than I'd ever done, really. And so Rochelle wasn't Rochelle, it was Norman. I got them backwards. Norman came along next. Never am sure, but I said '48. And I think Norman came along in about '51, and Rochelle came along about '53. So they were about two years apart. By then I had the house, and put the girls up front. every time one would come along, I'd add on a room or something. And I added the room up front, the girls' room. I just added a whole lot on the front and put closets in it, and then built us a bedroom on the back here, and put Norman in the middle room. Well, I went to work earlier in my business, 6:30, 7 o'clock every day. I never saw them getting up and going to school much. But they say they really fussed over the bathroom up there, that Martha was the king, ringleader in the thing, and would throw everybody's toothbrush out in the hall. I really hate to tell that, but that's what happened. And but I didn't see any of that. I just heard about it later on. But anyway, we had a happy life, and we worked here with. By that time, I was with D.J. Rose and Son. I was with them for 25, 30 years until I retired. And Claude Neal and I were unusually good friends. So we just, if you live your whole lifetime and have one good friend like Claude and I had the friendship, you're very fortunate. I had two. I had Claude and I had Dewey Weaver. I saw Dewey the other day, bless his heart. Anyway, Claude, I used to go by Claude's office every morning after I got my men going and everything, have a cup of coffee or something. And he and I had lunch together every day for many, many years. I'd pick him up one day, he'd pick me up next. We just had a great relationship. In fact, the fairgrounds, I said I bought it, Claude and I bought the fairgrounds together. We did many things together. And so one day he said, Norman, he had an old blank check, like you used to be able to go in a service station if you want to write a check, the old counter check, just write a check. Well, on the back was a picture that was drawn there. And he said, what do you think that's worth? And I said, well, what is it, Claude? He said, it's a house. I said, well, what size is it? He knew that, and he gave me the footage. And so I just gave him a number. And he said, well, God, you win $500 of it. And I said, I am? He said, yeah, let's ride out here and look at it. I said, all right. So we got in his car and started out 0301 toward Wilson. I thought he was buying a tenant house or something. And I said, Claude, where's the house? Right down the road. So we got down to Wilson. And I said, Claude, where's the house? Right down the road. So we got to Snow Hill, and he pulled in a place there, a service station, said, run in there and get a 6-pack of Budweiser. Well, I knew we were up no good then, so I said, okay. So I did, and we came back. And to make a long story short, we got to Nags Head. I mean, not Nags, gosh, no, we got to Topsail Beach, and I had never been to Topsail Beach before. And in those days, this was about in the 1962 or 3, along there sometime, I guess. And it was very scarce, very few houses, wasn't much down there in those days. So but the Topsail Motel was there. So he said, when we get to the motel, count the houses, and to the 12th one, and I guess there are 50 now, but only 12 for a couple of miles. And then there was a pretty little yellow house sitting on the ocean, and we pulled in there, and he had a key, and we went in and walked out on the deck, and looked at the ocean, the pretty beach and all. He said, you want to buy this house? I said, yeah. He said, let's buy it. I said, all right. So he and I bought the house, and called a man that owned it, a Rocky Mountain fellow, and bought the house. We didn't tell anybody. So we had to wait. It had already been rented for a certain length of time. We had to wait so we could take control. Once we could get it, we had the families lined up. We were going to go on a picnic. Well, they knew that Claude and I didn't know anything about a picnic. But anyway, we were going to go. So off we went. And we took them to Zopsel Beach and didn't even know we had gotten a house. And so we had the house and divided up into summer, great time. And then the rest of the year, if we wanted to use it, of course, we closed it up in the winter, but we just said, you going to use it this weekend? No, we got along great. No problem whatsoever, which Claude and I never had anyway. So, but we wanted one of our own. This was about late 60s. And I didn't know what to do. I wouldn't hurt Claude's feelings for anything in the world. So, but anyway, he and I were going to the club for lunch one day, and I said, Claude, I want to tell you something, and don't interrupt me till I get through. That's all right. I said, we like Topsail Beach so much that we'd like to have a house of our own year round. And I will sell my half to anyone that you want to have it for less than it's worth, so you can pick whomever you like. And I said, but we'd like to do that. And I said, no problem. You and I haven't had any problems. We'd love you and Faye and be kind of like that. And he said, okay, how long did it take you to get your nerve up to tell me that? I said, about a year. He said, well, Faye and I don't really like it down there. We'd like to get out anyway. So I bought him out, and so I had the yellow house. Well, early about 1970, we had good friends there in the real estate business, Rachel Magnabosco and William Warren, who ran the soda shop down there and ran about everything right down there. And William called me one night here in the Rocky Mountain. I was in the business. I went to work early. He said, Norman, I got a man wants to buy your house, and I've given him a price, and I want you to move up 2 doors to Dr. Corral's house, which was a much bigger, nicer house. And he told me what kind of money to send him, and I said, if you can do that, buddy, you got a deal. So next thing I knew, he called me and told me to move my toothbrush. That's what you do when you sell a house down there. Everything, the furniture and all goes except your personal things. So I moved up there, the house that I ended up with. I was there 46 years, wonderful years. The kids grew up down there, and I'd go down on Fridays and come back Mondays, and we had a good time. And of course, Claude and I had a good time. We had a good time where we went. But that's the way I ended up in Topsail Beach. Well, as I said, Claude and I did everything together. You might have known Mrs. Roundtree, who was she was in our church, and she died. Her husband was postmaster, I think, and they were in Good Shepherd. And when she died, her request was that her body be put in the church and that someone sat with it for 24 hours. So the ladies did that during the daytime, and men mostly at night. Well, Claude and I were assigned 12 to 2 or 2 to 4, something, I don't know, where in the night, but let's say 12. Well, I went over Claude's house about 8 o'clock to see about going about 8 o'clock. So, of course, he and I sat around, and we were known to nip a little bit in those days, and we did right much of that before we went down to the church. We got to the church, Ms. Roundtree, of course, was there in the casket, and whoever was ahead of us left. So Claude and I sat down right at the front pew on the right-hand side, and Claude was a nervous type, and he sat there, and Ms. Roundtree over here in the casket, and moving. And Claude could play the piano pretty well. He said, how do you make the organ work? I said, Claude, I don't know how. you've been junior warden 100 years. You know everything down here. I said, all right, I'll get it going. So I went. I knew where the switch was, so I flipped it on. The thing said, and so I got the hand. So he went up there, and I sat there with Miss Roundtree, and Claude got. I heard him up there, and then he said, "Gonna take a sentimental journey, boom, 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 gonna set my heart at ease." And here I'm playing Miss Roundtree, and he's up there playing the piano, singing, "Take a sentimental journey." I said, if anybody walk in here now, we'd never hit the end of it. But anyway, that's what we did. Claude and I would do something like that. And I'll tell one more that I really ought not to tell, but it's right cute. We were at the club one day, and I think I had already bought him out anyway to make the. He said, "Let's go to Topsail Beach." This is about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, I reckon. I said, all right. So off we went to Topsail Beach. And we got there at the bridge, over Surf City. They'd built a nightclub right down below it, right down beside the bridge. And this was during when integration was starting, And Claude and I got he said, let's eat dinner there. That's we go in there and have a little shooting and eat dinner. So, all right. So we pulled in, there's a big sign, members only. Right, a lot of places did that in those days to avoid the integration and stuff. So anyway, we knocked on the door, and this guy came in and said, all right. He said, I said, what did it take to join this thing? He said, 2 Alexander Hamiltons. Well, that's 2 $10 bills, I think, whatever that was, whatever the picture was. So we gave him 2 Alexander Hamiltons, and he gave us 2 cards. We were members, and came in, we were fine. So we got in there and had a big time and ate steaks and partied and did everything. And we came out about, I don't know what time it was. It was cold that night. And we came out, and Claude went in the phone booth. I said, what you doing? I'm gonna call Faye. I said, Claude, we're in enough trouble at home now. You're going to call Faye at 1 o'clock in the morning. So he called Faye, and Faye later said she could hear us. Well, I got cold, and I got in the phone booth too. And the damn thing, and we got to pinching. He pinched me, and I pinched him. And he dropped the phone, and Faye said she could hear us. And we got that thing rocking. I said, whoa, bud, whoa. If we turn this thing over on the door and we can't get out, I can hear the News and Observer right now, 2 young businessmen in Rocky Mount found in a phone booth. I said, let's see if we can cut. So we got on out of the phone booth and went on up to the house. And that's another story. The police cars followed us up there, and I knew his name was Slim Rackley. And I said, let's give Slim a slick. So we rode all around like we were crooks, and Slim would follow us around. And finally went to my house, and he pulled in. I said, Slim, go get us some water so we can prime the pump. So Slim went off and got us some water. Well, we just did things like that. We had a good time all the time. And what else I believe I'm going to tell about? Yes, Martha and Norman and Rochelle, because they were down there all the time. And they all worked down there. And they had a great group of young people that came in every year in the summer when school was out. My crowd, they were going across the bridge, and the day school started again, that's when they came back. So, and they had a good time, and as I said, I'd go down the weekends. So I had, because I was running 2 or 3 things and had a whole lot of, like everybody does in business, a tough week sometime. I had a special tough week that week, and I told my guy in the office, I said, Warren, it's Thursday. I'm going on down to the beach today. If you need me, call me. I ain't gonna stay around here tomorrow. So I showed up at Topsail Beach a day early. Well, I thought they all smiled and glad to see me and all that, but it didn't seem real genuine. So something was wrong. So I heard later that the word's getting around the beach that Big NY has come in a day early. That was bad news. So I was upstairs in the house, is up on Powell, I heard of something out back, and I looked out the window, and a truck was backing up there, unloading a keg of beer, and they put it under the house, in the garage. So, something's going on here now. So it turned out the kids had parties at different people's houses, and mine had been picked for Thursday, and which was great. The kids, we all knew where they were, and they did, and just a wonderful thing that. So all night they would be out on the deck, and if they needed a beer, they'd come through, bam the door, boom, 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 down the steps. It was out all night long that noise. I'm in trying to sleep. But Big NY came in a day early and messed up your party. Yes, that's what I had a boat down there, and I'd go down some Fridays and just sort of unwind. I'd get the boat and run it around out on the inland waterway in the background. I'd go up to Bobby Bush. Bobby ran the marina there. That's where we bought our gas and everything. And I was paying him about every 2 weeks. And I said, Bobby, let me pay you. Pulled in. He gave me the bill. I said, Bobby, this can't be my bill. My boat won't burn this much gas. Bobby's native down there. He said, Norman, you don't know about the ski school. I said, what are you talking about, ski school? Oh, yeah, Norman's running a ski school down here now. He uses your boat, your skis, your gas. I said, well, Bobby, how long do you think it'll take me to get to my house? He said, well, 4 or 5 minutes. I said, well, look at your watch, because in 4 or 5 minutes, the ski school going to be closed. But I'm sure I didn't do that. But Norman's running a ski school down there, and he and another guy, and teaching young kids how to ski. All profit, yeah. Well, I bet I didn't do it, but somebody's going to cut that out somehow or another. But anyway, that was a real blessing. We had a great time down there. I was Claude and myself were big buddies, and I used to I said, Claude, I'll tell you what I think. Hey, I told you about thinking. He used to love to tell me that. So I think getting my wings in the Air Force was one of them. I had to work hard to do that, and I was mighty happy and pleased to do that. That was an achievement. I guess the biggest thing, though, in achieving is what we've been talking about. I had a happy family. I worked hard. I was able to take care of them well, and we had a happy life together. And my kids grew up happy, and I managed to be in position to help them do whatever they wanted to do in their adult life. I think, to me, that's my best achievement. Yeah, is being hopefully a good daddy. I've tried to do that, and I've tried to be a good husband. Sometimes Nancy tells me I'm not, but but I'd like to think I am. I try. I certainly do. No, depression didn't affect me a great deal like it did a lot of folks, but I'm sure that was a tragedy for so many people. And thank goodness I didn't have to experience that. But other people around me were, and I can remember kids in school, and now look back on it, I can see they didn't have clothes to wear. Probably, and I can remember, I didn't know why then, but I know now. Well, God, Martha, I'm in the second month of my 90th year, And so I've seen a lot of things happen, and I would think that some things that happen, uh, like you're talking about, it depends on your or my circumstance. It might mean a lot to me and might not mean much to you. Uh, I think uh, D-Day might be the success of D-Day and the war getting over might be one thing that I was thankful for and impressed with. I think I was at Topsail Beach when they walked on the moon, and that I just fabulous that that happened. I just couldn't believe that. Uh, and so many things. Kennedy's assassination was terrible, but it wasn't like walking on the moon. It's just terrible tragedy. We've had so many wonderful things like the astronauts and the moonwalk, and there's no telling what's ahead of us down the road now. Uh, you look back and you see what that thing right there. It wasn't. I went to New York World's Fair in 1939 as a Boy Scout with Bill Draper, and Neil Nelson and myself were paired off as a team. And Bill said, everybody go do what they want to do, but be back here at a certain time and stay with your buddy. So Neil and I went to the World's Fair together. And I remember walking in a building, and Neil went in one room and I went in another, and I could see him on a box, a picture of him, and they said it was television, and that someday we'd have those things in our home, and you could see pictures, and they could, well, you know, that couldn't happen. And here, and when you walked in the day, I'm here looking at television, and I thought 1939 was impossible. But so, what in the world have we got going 50, 75 years from now? And there's no telling. I don't know whether it's going to be good or bad. Sometimes I think we're getting too far too fast. But I don't know whether it's hard to pick one single thing that I have experienced. I'm not a computer person. I have one at the office, and I do my emails, and I can get on the internet and see what the market's doing or something like that. But I don't use it for any reason. I don't. Most people, when they get anything, get an illness, they run that computer and see what to do about it. I don't do that kind of thing. But overall, you used to go in somewhere to be waited on, and someone would wait on you, and now if you go in, somebody sit behind a thing, you ask them a question, they're on the computer. Everybody's got a computer. I went to have my physical exam the other day, 6 months, and everything's on the computer. Matt Chamberlain, he's on the computer, and I go out and talk to the lady about my next appointment. She's on the computer, so everything is on the computer now, and you don't see anybody with a pencil and writing down something anymore. I guess it's a good thing. I don't know. Sometimes I wish I'd never heard of the thing. You pick up the phone, call somebody about something out of town. You don't even talk to a person. You talk to somebody on a computer, I guess. But I don't know. I'm just not but it had to come. I think probably any successful family or any success of anything really, you've got to have a certain amount of love, and if you're in your home, and we have it out in ours, and we are interested in each other and love each other, and I've never been one. Some kids when they get to be 18 or whatever, you open the door, okay, goodbye. I've never felt that way at all. And I think your love for your fellow man, I've tried all my life in business to be fair and treat people the way I want to be treated. And I think that type thing would be what I would suggest to them, that they love each other. Yeah. See, when I was a boy, I think I said the lake wasn't there, and I'll never forget that lake being built. It was a reed marsh, and Stansel's store ran a store over there across the street, and everybody traded there for groceries. And I was just a kid down there on my bicycle, and a big backhoe backed in there and started digging. And they were beginning to dig the lake. And then during the WPA work progress or something like that, Roosevelt started to put men to work. And there were lawyers and everything else out there pushing wheelbarrows and men trying to earn anything they could. And they built that lake rolling wheelbarrows, hundreds of them out there. And I never will forget that. When I was young, my mother would put me off at the Planters Bank down there. In the afternoon, I'd ride home with my dad. That was when I was 5 or 6, 4 or 5. And it wasn't so long ago, I'm sure you remember, but when you go downtown on Main Street, I could walk along and say, hey, Martha, and hey, Pete, and everybody knew everybody. And you go in Daniel's store there and Rocky Mountain Shoe and Clothing, or across the Epsteins, and walk in Epsteins, and everybody knew you in there, and Belks. I mean, we had a great place to shop and enjoy in Rocky Mountain. We don't have that anymore. I don't think we'll ever have it again. The Rocky Mountain, and we had so many industries, Burlington Industries and the tobacco, Liggett Miles and all that. We had so many fine industries for people to get jobs we don't have anymore, and they're all suffering now. And I don't think they'll ever come back. I don't think anything like that ever will. So right now, in this particular time, I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I'm not real happy with where Rocky Mountain's going. And it's not any one person's fault, it's just the times and the way things have worked. I don't see what we have here to offer industry to why they would want to come here. I was on years ago when Bill Rose was here. I was on his committee and worked with him a lot. A lot of folks didn't like Bill, but he was the kind of fellow that could get things done. He brought a lot of industry here that we had for years, and some of it's still here. But those days, you could do that. And Rocky Mountain's just I don't know how, if I were somebody looking for a place to build my industry, I think, and had no idea about any of it, and they took me to Rocky Mountain, to Wilson, and to Greenville, and to different places, well, I think, I don't know where Rocky Mountain would be on the list. I think Greenville would probably, that's one of the most progressive towns around here now, and it's because they have East Carolina, the college, and that wonderful hospital down there, and they have everything going for them. I noticed in talking about this civic center they want to build here in Rocky Mountain, the outfit that said it would work, I understand, used Concord, North Carolina, as an example. Well, our daughter Martha, the daughter Jennifer, is lives in Concord, and we go there once in a while. And you can't tell when you drive out of Concord when you get to Charlotte. It's all one big people there, and you got that big racetrack and drawing. You've got the football, professional football. You've got everything going for them, and we don't have that. I don't see the comparison, but anyway, that's I don't know. I hope Rocky Mount can come out of it very soon. Hope so. I'm still glad I live here. I certainly want to tell my children to always tell the truth. I go back to my boss I love so much, Dylan Rose, Toby. I can tell so many stories about him, which I did not long ago for Dylan. But anyway, I went in his office one day. Mine was right down from him in the same building, but the other end of it. And I went in there one day in his office, and he was on the phone, and I started in there, and I turned around and started out because he was on the phone, and he motioned to me to come on in. So I sat down in a chair right beside him, and he was talking on the phone, and he was saying, "No, Bill. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. I think I'll go on to court. I ain't never been in court before, and like to see how I get on." And anyway, this finished the conversation, and he looked at me and he said, "Norman, I'm gonna quit lying." I said, "You are gonna quit lying?" "I'm gonna quit lying." So you tell the truth, you can tell it the same way every time. You tell a lie and you try to tell it again, and you can't get the same thing. So that was, I don't know, well, you almost know who it was, bless his heart. That was Bill Thorpe. And we'd had a truck wreck, and they evidently wanted Biggin to settle out of court. I don't know what it. And so he said, "Bill told me a fib last week about this thing, and now he's trying to tell it again. He can't get it right, and I knew he didn't have it. And I would tell him where he was wrong, and I got him all confused. But if he told me the truth, he could have told it just like that." So I never did forget that. That's a good thing. You can always tell the truth the same way, but you can't tell the lie the same way much. You got to kind of ad-lib a little bit. I've talked some about my dad mostly, and I haven't talked much about my mother. I've talked hardly at all about her. But she was a great person. As I said, she's from Lewisburg, North Carolina, and grew up there. And I don't know whether I've told it the second time or not about her coming here and Dad seeing her at the boarding house. If I didn't, as I said, Daddy was working with everything around here, and he was involved in the Chamber of Commerce and everything. And in those days, Miss Bertha Edwards had a boarding house and on Church Street, right along where the Centura Bank is now. And everybody, they went into motels or anything like that in those days. And my mother, who had been married to a Dr. Swindell during World War I, when he developed a disease or some ailment, and he died in France, so he came home, but he was sick, and she came here as a widow. And I don't know why she came. I don't know who she was working for at the time, but she was living there at Miss Bertha Edwards' house, and everybody went over there kind of like going to Browns, where everybody went to Miss Bertha's and had lunch and had a big old table. I remember seeing it. And she was there eating her lunch, and my dad walked in. He was just a young guy, and pointed to her. He'd never seen her before. He said, "I'm gonna marry that girl right there." and it upset Mother so bad she had to go up to her room and cry. And Miss Bertha went with her to help her cry and get over it, and said, "That's just Norman Chambers. That's just the way he is. Don't pay attention to him." And sure enough, he married her, and they were married in about 1922, I think, on August the 4th of 22. And I came along in 25, and I didn't talk about Maury. Maury was born in the 1301 Sunset, right there in the house. Adam Thorpe came out and delivered him, and that's the way you did in those days. He was born in about 35 in January. No, but we had like any family, we had our ups and downs and things, but we got along fine. I don't remember. I had a happy growing up. There were some things that like in any family that I'd rather not had happen, but they did, and circumstances that came to light that I'd rather had been another way. But that's the way every family is, every life, I guess. You can have that. But Mother was a great lady, and she did a lot for me. In fact, she got me my job with Sam Toler. I don't know how she did it. Well, at least she got me the interview. Sam told me that he hired me because he was a potentate of the shrine here, and he would be gone a year. And he wanted me to just be there in the office and someone that knew folks in town and could go in the bank and talk to folks, things like that, while he was gone. So I stayed there with him. I was there about 5 years, I think, with him. He did a lot for me. He gave me my first job, which I'll never forget, and got me started in the direction I needed to go. I'll never forget when like Toby said, he didn't like to pay you, and that's why I left, of course. I had Norman on the way and that kind of thing, so I had to do something. So anyway, I did, but he was a great fellow. I know when I walked in that morning, I never did. I often wonder what would happen if I had changed my mind. He was in his office, and I went in there, and I said, "Mr. Toler, I'm going to give you all the notice you want, but I'm going to leave and go to work with a company selling building materials on the road." And he looked at me and he said, "Norman, if you had walked in here and cut off my right arm, you couldn't have done me any more harm." And that was hard to take. He said, "Why do you think I've kept this business going? I don't have any children. Why do you think? It's for you." Well, I don't know. I was kind of tempted, but I often wonder what would he have done if. I wish I was too young. I wish I had been able to say, "Mr. Toler, if you will give me a contract and let me buy into the business yearly until I own some of it or own it, I might do that." But I can't. I knew I couldn't just sit there hoping someday he might do what he said. I made the right move, but you can't help but wonder, what if? What if? And You know, you look back on your life, and I think I might have said this when I was talking to Dylan, but everybody can. There's certain things that happen to you in it. If you go on the other way, wonder what would have happened. Or thank goodness I went the way I went. Like going to work with Toby Rose. That's the best move I ever made. One of them. Being at the right place at the right time. When he died, I had been there long enough to establish myself and be an integral part of the continuation of the business. They needed me. They could have done without me, but they needed me like they did Dewey and A. And we knew what to do and how to do it. But you can always do that. And I'm sure you can always say, gosh, I wish I hadn't taken that road. Like Yogi Berra said, when you get to a fork in the road, take it. So you don't ever know which one to take. But the good Lord has blessed me way beyond what I deserve in my 90 years, and I'm very, very thankful for it. I've had so many blessings. And still got them. 2 of them sitting right over there. Back when my children were born, they were born at Parkview Hospital. Adam Thorpe, Dr. Adam Thorpe, delivered Martha and Norman, and Brantley delivered Rochelle. And back in those days at Parkview Hospital, the daddy couldn't come walking right in the room like they do now and pick the baby up and all. I only saw it through a glass window, and you could stand there and look at it, and they would have several there. Well, Rochelle was one of the prettiest little babies they'd ever had come through there. Martha, look at her. And she gets all upset. But I would stand there to see Rochelle, and other people who didn't even know me would come up and say, look at that one. Isn't that the prettiest thing you have ever seen in your life? And I would say, that's my baby right there. And but Martha gets jealous when I would tell that story. But that's what happened. She was one pretty little thing. I think she's still pretty. We went up that Saturday and had lunch with her. And she's my little gal. She's my little one. Always will be that way. I have a singular relationship with each one of my children. I love them all the same, but we have getting together. I don't know whether I express that properly or not, but we just enjoy certain things together, and they're all different. They're supposed to be. I said, I told some other day, who it was, whose daughter, Vince Durham, I think Vince wanted to know, said he was going to talk to my son Norman and needed some advice about how to be father of the groom, or the bride, I believe it is the bride. I said, Vince, you don't need to talk, I was having lunch with him, you don't need to talk to Norman, you need to talk to me. I have 2 daughters and I've had 5 weddings. I know all about it. You know, you talk about Claude Mayo, but I would go over there and he had hospice, and I'd go, I took a bunch of men over there. They didn't have a downstairs bedroom, so I put a hospital bed in a little office there where Mr. Tyler used to have when he built the house, and made him a bedroom in there, and he was in that bed. I went in there and, every day, and he would be there with his eyes closed like that. And I'd say, Claude, it's Norman. Hey, Claude, talk to him. He wouldn't say a damn thing. And so I'd stay and go. So I went there the day before he died. And a little girl was sitting there. She didn't know who in the world I was. And I said, Claude Mayo. Norman, I've been coming here every day to talk to you, and you've been laying there and don't say a damn thing, and I'm tired of it. I want you to talk to me. And he opened his eyes and said, shut up. And that's the last thing I heard, but I wouldn't take anything in the world for that. He did it. Is your time up?